Hello, everyone, and welcome to one more discussion that we're hosting by CRA Connect. And we love to have these conversations and we love to bring in members from our community, actual CRAs or actual CTAs or actual clinical research professionals, because we love to have conversations that are practical, that are from our day-to-day, especially as CRAs, and that affect us and not only affect us, but we are responsible for those, let's say, items and elements that we like to discuss. And we chose as a topic for today's discussion documentation. And I'm sure that if you are a CRA, or maybe if you are a CTA, or maybe you are a study startup coordinator, or maybe you are one of the multiple and many clinical research professional roles that we have within clinical trials industry, you must at one point maybe feel overwhelmed by the documentation amount, or maybe by the chasing your sites for documentation, or maybe the quality check of the documentation. It's a lot that we have to do, right, on a continuous and daily basis that has to do with documentation of a clinical trial. Before I introduce you to our panels and the members who are joining me today in this conversation, I want to make sure that the chat works, because this is a streamlined platform, so we can't have a direct live conversation. So the way I would love to engage you in a conversation is through the chat. So if you can say hi, tell me where you're from, where you're connecting from, if you can hear me, if you can see me, if everything is working well, then this way I can also see you. I see Catherine, who's saying hello from Greensboro. Hi, Catherine. Hi, Satya. I see that comments are already coming in. I know it takes a few seconds of delay between the comment is posted and it reaches us. But before I bring in the panelists on the screen, I want to just remind you that please, at any point, any question you might have, any thought you might want to just bring into the conversation and participate and engage, put it into the chat, because we will be able to bring that question on the screen and we can address it. We can this way have a conversation and we can follow up with that, and we can say that we don't miss any of the conversations that we're having in the meantime. Hello, Monica. Hello, Nancy. Hello, Annalisa. Hello, Nicole. So I see everyone popping in. So the chat is working. Perfect. We're live. Chat is working. You can see me. Perfect. So let's start the topic of today. As you know, maybe you know me, maybe you don't, doesn't matter, but I'll give you a short introduction of why I'm hosting these conversations, these live events, specifically to CRAs. So I'm Maria, and I'm a former CRA. I used to be a CRA in Spain, so I was monitoring sites all around the country. And from 2 years ago, I am the founder of CRA Connect. And if you don't know, we are a community, an online private community for CRAs, and we support the onboarding. So we train CRAs, we give you resources so that you can start your journey as a CRA, but we also support current CRAs through mentorship programs, through weekly webinars, weekly masterclasses that we have, competencies and skills that you need to learn and you need to know so that you can do your job as a CRA. We have a lot more, but if you're interested, you can always go to CRAConnect.so and learn more about us. We're over 800 all over the world. And if you want to join a community from which all of us here on the panel are part of, you're more than welcome to join us and to say hi once you're in and introduce yourself. Having said that, I want to bring up the panel that we have today, and I'm very excited because I have with me 4 other members from CRA Connect community, and maybe you know them already from previous live events that we do. We do these sessions every 2 weeks. I have with me Maria del Mar, who is a CRA, also an experienced CRA based in Spain. I have Charlotte, who is also a senior CRA based in the UK. I have also with me Stasia, and she is a site relationship coordinator. And I also have Kitty with me, who used to be a study startup coordinator and now is an associate clinical project manager. So I'm excited because we will get to discuss in this panel the different perspectives of the clinical trial documentation management, not only as CRAs, because we have here on the panel 2 actual current experience, I would say even for almost 5 former CRAs, but we also will see from the perspective of a study startup, from the perspective of keeping that relationship with our sites, how does documentation affect and have an impact into us managing and monitoring clinical studies? Now, in the preparation of this live event, we realized one thing, and I would love to know here in the chat if you agree or disagree with me before we actually go into the topics that we want to discuss. And we realized when we speak about documentation, at every point in the course of a clinical trial, from not only study initiation, but even from study startup, from even feasibility to maintenance to study closure, to all the course, all the journey of a clinical trial, we need to manage documentation. We need to constantly chase documentation. We need to check, to review documentation, to generate documentation. Sometimes us ourselves as maybe CRAs, but sometimes to make sure that our sites are generating and that are keeping and updating that documentation. So if we take it from step one, or maybe let's say it's step 0.1, where we have that study startup phase, that documentation, where we need to put together that submission package. Even if we think of that submission package to the regulatory authorities or to the ethics committees, and depending on your location and maybe depending on the company that you were working for, you might also be in charge of that as a CRA. When I was a CRA for one of the most known CROs that there is in the market, I did everything from the submission to the regulatory authorities and the ethics committee, to the query management, to the questions that they might have, to all that back and forth between the site, regulatory department within the with the authorities, but also with the sponsor, because we had a lot of conversations going through. So now I'm curious from even a step, let's say 0.2, and I want to ask Stasia here, how is the process and how is the experience from a feasibility perspective? Because I know we need to put together a lot of documentation. What is that documentation? And what would you say are the challenges that you face when you put together this feasibility package?
Yeah. So first of all, it's important to say that it's really the key to handle this documentation well from the very beginning, because you are setting the tone of how the rest of the study is gonna go. So if you present yourself as unprofessional, then you can imagine how the rest of the study is gonna go. But if you do it well, you have more chances of later on doing well as well.
Yeah.
So one of the documents that, and quite important one, that that site relationship coordinators deal almost on daily basis with, is confidentiality disclosure agreement, CDA. For those who don't know what is this is a document that all the parties who are participating in the clinical trials sign. And by signing, they say that they will not share any confidential information with anyone for a specific amount of time. This document is very important because if it's not done well, it can lead to really big legal issues, which then bring with themselves big economic issues, costs. You can damage your reputation, you can damage trust of your clients and your sites, you can damage your relationship with them. So it's really important. And even if we remove this like catastrophic part from issue, another really important point is that you want to do it well, because even in the process while you're still negotiating with the site, because imagine needing to send one single document to a doctor who is anyway super busy like 300 times just because you had a little typo or you didn't write a protocol title well or so on. So it doesn't come off as professional when you make those mistakes. So even though site relationship coordinators are not directly responsible in writing the whole document themselves, we are responsible to review it and to check that everything is well before we send it out to the site. So the main things that we check is name of the parties that will be signing. So it needs to be full legal name of the site, of CRO, of the sponsor. The addresses, is it a primary legal address written or is it some random one? We check the date of the CDA. We need to check if the people who are supposed to sign are legally allowed to sign this document. You need to check the version of the document that you are sending, because there is a lot of back and forth in negotiation. You want to make sure that it's last version, that there is no comments left, that all the changes were accepted, and that all pages are there. And obviously, you can go in more detail to check if the governing laws are correctly listed, and so on and so on. And another document that we deal with quite often is feasibility questionnaires. We send them out to sites and we chase sites to complete them. But also we assist the sites to finish them if there is any issue or if they face some blocker or something.
Yeah.
As well, in this process, we can review those questionnaires and suggest to site teams how to improve them. So, are the questions redundant? Are we asking questions that we already have information on from before? Is the feasibility questionnaire too long? Is there something that we can assess during QV? So we are constantly thinking on how to improve the process. And also, we handle site selection and non-selection letters, which obviously, once the sponsor makes a decision who they want to proceed with and who they don't want to proceed with, we send them out, and there you check the standard things, so the name of the protocol, the site, the address, and so on. In this whole process, it is really important to be aligned with the other teams. So regulatory, contract, site activation, sponsor, you need to clearly know expectations and deadlines. Because, for example, if you need to finish feasibility in a really short time, you might want to consider changing your strategy. So, for example, you might want to propose to combine feasibility questionnaire and QV. So jumping on a call with a site and completing QV and feasibility questionnaire at the same time. And in that way, you speed up the process.
I love those tips. And I love that it makes us realize that already before even perhaps a CRA comes in, because we haven't yet initiated, so perhaps we don't even have a CRA assigned to that site, we already have a considerable amount of documentation that is being generated, and we will have to do a quality check. We'll have to make sure that it's updated, it's kept track of, it's probably also in the ETMF, isn't it? Not just sitting at the site. What sits at the site, what sits at the sponsor. So I'm now curious of if we move a little step forward into the journey of a clinical trial. Let's say we get to the startup phase. We're still, let's say, past a little bit that feasibility or around that feasibility. Kitty, from your perspective, I know you were a study startup associate, so you have a lot of experience into managing this package of documentation when it comes to the study startup. What's your experience? What's your perspective from a documentation perspective?
First of all, Stasia said very well and very altogether all the documents we are facing in a startup as well. Feasibility is a very, very important part of the main study. So I think it's very set the tone what we are facing after in study startup. So yes, you have to spot everything or little things which is important from the sponsor part, and you have to assist all the way through to the sites. And I think the most important thing you can do is to work under their hands and give every little aspects and every little answers and questions that they are facing. And maybe you have to think on their feet and think with their minds how they will face with an issue, what should I set them, what should I collect all the information that can cause a problem, to them. Because most of the time we can say that the PIs are often overwhelmed with the work. So we know that the feasibility and the startup documentation mostly in the study coordinator or the sub-investigator hands. Maybe they have more information, need more information from you. So you have to be really prepared I see the issue that will cause a problem, so I will highlight them. So that's the process, I think, that is very important, so you can really be focused and be before the problem,
Yeah.
because startup, it's a really, really fast-paced phase, like a competition or something like that. A very, very short deadlines. So you have to be prepared almost every hour, and you will be a manager in your back, and asking, you have a questionnaire, you have the CVs, you have the agreements signed and everything.
Because
Yes,
it depends, based on you getting those documents, it depends how soon you can initiate the study and you can start recruiting patients, right? It's a timeline.
Yes. So as Stasia said, that the feasibility questionnaires are very, very important, especially in the startup phase, because it will help you what kind of equipments, what kind of documentation you will need. And as through time to time and experience, you will see, okay, for this documentation, for this equipment, I need these certifications, I need this kind of CV, I need this kind of training, and you will have a whole bunch of tool in your hand to prepare the next site, and you will get this right so quickly, and you will get more help to the sites.
Absolutely. So let's assume that we already have that package of study startup that we need, from what you mentioned, the CVs to the GCPs to certificates to calibration to equipment certificates, anything and everything we need. Let's move on to initiation, because let's say we are giving green light, we have all the approvals, regulatory approvals, sponsor or study manager says, let's go. We can start initiating and doing that site initiation visits that bring in the CRAs to go on site, or maybe perform it remotely if we do a site initiation remotely. But then how do we prepare for a site initiation, and how do we also make sure that we get all the documentation we need at that site initiation visit? Maria del Mar, I would love to know your thoughts from a CRA perspective who's done many site initiation visits.
At the start of the study, at the site initiation visit, it's really important to make, from my perspective, documentation as easy to follow as possible, because sites often receive a ton of documents, and without clear instructions, many times they don't know what they are expected to do, what they have to do with these documents. So I think ideally it's a good idea to send them just a simple summary with the package, and to tell them what needs to be signed and by whom, what needs to be filed, and what's just for review, and more importantly, what's absolutely needed for site activation. The most, the goal we have.
Yeah.
So sometimes even to just pre-complete some of the logs to help save time, so the staff knows who has to sign which document. It makes the process much smoother, and it helps to avoid back and forth. But the challenge is that it seems like a simple task, but like everything, it takes time. And the timelines are so tight, and we do not have the time to do that. So whenever we have the time, it's a great task we can do. It saves a lot of time later on for the site and for us, but at the moment, to prepare all the documentation and how it has to be handled, it seems simple, but it's not. It's not as simple as it seems. Yes.
I can definitely see myself in the experience that you were explaining, because I remember how after let's say 2-3 years of being a CRA, and I went to a site initiation visit. Now, if you're a CRA, you don't always at all times have some site initiation visit to do. You might do a, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 site initiation visits, and then for a certain period of time you have a pause, and then maybe you come back to doing a site initiation visit after 2-3 years. And I remember telling myself, I've done this before, I know how it works, I know what to expect. I will get on site. I will be given, of course, I will not be given 8 hours, but maybe I will get to have 4 hours with my sites, and I will go through all the documentation. And I remember going on site to this site to do the site initiation visit, and it was the pure chaos you can imagine. I had the PI coming in for 2 minutes saying, what do I sign? Not sitting down at the table. We had then the study coordinator saying, I will just pop in, make sure that you keep track of who pops in to discuss with you and sign documents and who you need, because then at the end we will chase them. Then I remember that the investigator side file that was fully paper, of course, it was a huge investigator side file. So I was missing 2 binders from I think it was 9 binders that I had to have. What was in those 9 binders? I have no idea. I did eventually have a big idea what was in those binders, but it can be very, very overwhelming. And I think my tip my lesson learned from those site initiation visits was to manage and to properly keep track of documentation. You need a guide, you need a checklist, you need something that takes you through every single document that you need to get, from who you need to get it, and where you need to save it. And I think that makes me think of the ICH GCP documents that we have, the E6 are 4 now, that at the end of the document, we have this list of the 54, I think they're 54 or 55, I think they're 54 documents that are stated as the mandatory documents in every single clinical trial. So those essential documents that we have, they also tell us where they need to be saved, stored in the ISF at the site or in the ETMF, sitting with the sponsor. So that also could be a great guide for CRAs who maybe perhaps don't have a guide for how to manage the documentation when it comes to site initiation visits. But you can always make your own checklists that as preparation for the site initiation visit. Get your site initiation visit report and extract from there what are the documents that you will need to report as having obtained or as having signed or having completed at the site, and make your own checklist. And if you don't have a checklist, we have one. CRAConnect always, we're generating continuously all these checklists for CRAs, so you can always download ours. I see we have a question here related to what we're discussing, and thank you for the question. I would appreciate if the presenter will speak about the EMR checklist. What is it to be looked at? So EMR checklist, I assume we're speaking about the source data checklist, the monitoring checklist. I'm a bit unsure.
I think they are referring to the EMRQ,
Go ahead.
the electronic system questionnaire that sponsors are often sending out to sites, where they want to be sure how they are consisting and how they are make sure that the source documents saved electronically in the hospitals or in the clinics. So it's basically they want to know that what kind of IT supplies they are using. It's very, very basic question for an IT guy. So I mostly suggested to my sites that, okay, find the IT department on the clinic and file it and fulfill it together. Because of course, as a study coordinator or a PI or a sub-investigator, they are not aware what kind of version of the system has, what kind of application they have, or all these kind of IT-related questions. So you can totally send it to the site and say, okay, find your IT guy and fulfill it together. But with the sponsor, you have to talk, okay, what kind of answers we are looking to say it no or yes. So it's very, very important.
So definitely this is an important document from the feasibility package.
Yes, it's a very important part, yes.
Amazing. Thank you for that question. I love to get these type of conversations on this panel. Now let's move on to in the course of that clinical trial. So let's say we have all the documents that we need now at initiation, and we're all now given green light to start recruiting patients. So we start enrolling patients. We do, that first patient visit monitoring visit, but we move on. So we start performing all of those interim monitoring visits that can be on site. They can be remote monitoring visits. It really depends on every single site, and the frequency of monitoring visits, of course, depends on every single study as well. Now, Charlotte, from your perspectives as a senior and experienced CRA, I would love to learn, how do you prepare to manage all the documentation around a monitoring visit? Because as we all know, there's documentation that's being generated before, during, and after the monitoring visit. So what's your approach to that?
I agree 100% with using your own tracker to track all documentations for each site that you're going to monitor throughout the course of the study. So if you have that and keep it up to date, it will save you a lot of time on site or just before you go on site to from scrambling around trying to figure out what version this document's meant to be on, or what this site is meant to have filed from the past couple of weeks where you haven't been on site. And having a good plan in place to know which documents am I going to look at, which ones do I need to collect, which ones are new, which ones are outstanding. And it's important to make sure you prioritize what that visit is going to be, because it's easy to just have a checklist and go, I need to collect X, Y, Z document and forget about the bigger picture. It can be, right, I've collected that document, but you haven't actually reviewed the document to make sure it's completed correctly, so it can be uploaded to TMF and not be rejected because it's not compliant, it's missing a signature, or there's a scribble on it that shouldn't be there. So it's very important that you prioritize, focus on what you need to collect and review at that visit, rather than an overall just collect, which is, it's easier now. There's a bit more of a mix between electronic documents and paper. When it was all paper, it was overwhelming. When you had paper CRFs as well, and you had to take all copies of those, it was it was difficult to keep track of. But and it's, on the other hand, it's hard. It's easy to fall into the trap of reviewing every single document that is on site. Even ignoring the ISF, the amount of documents there are it's a lot, whether they're in the patient medical records or paper-based. So it's, again, assess for that visit what is either high risk or high priority, and base your monitoring visit on that. So guided by the risks, the data trends, which documents can I only collect on site, and which ones can I obtain at another time in an email or at a later date. Because there's always, one thing I've learned, there's always more opportunities to collect a document. Like when you're saying with the site initiation visits, I used to panic a lot saying, I've not completed this has not been obtained, thinking it had to be done right there on site, when really there's always an opportunity to get that document again.
Yeah. Sometimes in my mind, the reaction I had to your mention was, unless it's a closeout visit. But even then, you can still have a chance to get a document that maybe you've missed, because perhaps you're leaving the closeout visit and you remember last minute, or maybe you're on the train back home and you remember, I didn't get that document. You still have a chance to reach out to your study coordinator or to your PI and get that document. So it's absolutely true. And I couldn't not envision when we have this section in the ISF that it's called miscellaneous or communication, or any random things that don't go to specific sections. There's always some section about it that you usually don't know where to put maybe that email. You're not sure if it's relevant enough, but some decisions were discussed there, so you just put it into that section. So it's so important also to not save documents, over file, because those documents, in terms of an audit or of an inspection, they will be questioned. Why are they here? Is it because there was a decision made? Is it because it's related to something else in the ISF? Maybe even you said something in that email chain that you didn't realize you're filing, but then it becomes a finding or an issue. And maybe that wasn't even necessary to have it in the ISF. We have a question here from Lorraine. Thank you, Lorraine, for that question. When you take over from a CRA and document tracker is in place, do CTMs have a list of all versions of documents needed? This is such a good question. Charlotte, what's your experience when we have handovers from CRAs to CRAs?
The experience is that, for me or the project managers I've worked for, we usually do have we call it a regulatory tracker. And on there, we list all the documents that have been created for the study, the versions that they're currently on, what's been superseded, and list all the amendments in there to explain what was updated in those documents at that time. So I've had that for a couple of studies anyway, and I've created them for mine just so you have that easier transition when you hand over. But it is difficult when you take on a study and there's nothing, and you have to figure it out by going through all the documents in the TMF and ISF. So usually my experience is yes, that is in place, but it's not a mandatory requirement. It's more good practice to keep.
Absolutely. And I wish handovers were somehow easier or more transparent, so that the information one CRA gets to compile and put together gets transmitted to the next CRAs. Because from my experience, I can see the same thing. If it's related to, the essential documents, regulatory or required personnel certifications or CVs, all those documents we need tracked, then it's easy to have sort of a versioning of those documents. But unless it's those essential documents, the 54 documents, it's very hard to keep track of. And this takes me to Maria del Mar said in the preparation of this conversation, she said that there's a hidden workload of documentation as a CRA. Maria del Mar, do you still feel that, or even more?
Even more, yes. I think it's one part of the CRA role that often goes unnoticed. It's the amount of documentation that we have to manage, like we said, from startup to the closeout of the study, and how much time it takes to keep it all up to date, from protocols and IBs to delegation logs, GCP, CV, like you said, the 54 documents, acknowledgement of receipts.
Yeah.
Documents are constantly being updated, replaced, then you have a new protocol amendment, and you start up like from zero again, and I do feel like now as an in-house CRA, this is a big part of my daily work. And sometimes as a CRA, we always focus on data and queries, which of course it's more urgent, but
Yeah.
documentations can be easily left behind. And if you wait too long, then it becomes a huge backlog that adds a lot of stress as the study progress and we are facing the closeout. So it's important to manage it progressively.
Yeah.
And, it depends a lot of the time you have, but
Yeah.
yes, it's a huge work that I think it's usually not considered when you think about the CRA role. You don't think about all the documents that we have to manage and keep on track.
Yeah, and you said it very, very spot on when you said it creates a lot of stress for CRAs, but I think that stress can also create some conflict perhaps with sites, CRAs, sponsor, a lot of chasing, a lot of why are our expectations not met because we're not getting this documentation. So here's where I want to ask Stasia as a site relationship coordinator. From your perspective, knowing that, as we've raised it here, documentation can raise certain stress or certain conflicts or rough patches sometimes, even between our CRAs or our CTAs or our study team and the sites, how do we deal with these issues, documentation issues?
Yeah. So as the name suggests, like site relationship coordinator, another part, actually main part of our role is to build and maintain strong relationships with site. And obviously we utilize those relationships. What does that mean? It means that PIs, site staff, study coordinators, like they trust us. They feel confident coming to us if they have issue, but they also don't mind if we go to them and say, hey, like our CRA is experiencing this, can we come to some solution or so on. We utilize these relationships. If we need to hop on a call or set a meeting, or even if I need to dig out some contact from I don't know when and call and say, hey, can you please chase the PI? He is unresponsive. We really need this because of that and that reason. Another really important aspect of this part of our job is constantly collecting feedback from CRAs, from CTMs, from site staff, from sponsor. And seeing what works and what doesn't work, because it's easier to prevent an issue than to solve it, especially with the sites that you already have experience working with. I think it's a bit silly to be, repeating the same mistakes and coming to same blockers and so on. I would say, and I'm saying this now not only for site relationship coordinators, I think it also for everybody who is working on a clinical trial, especially CRAs, like build your relationships and maintain them, whether it be through, having a regular check-ins with your site, calling once a week your study coordinator, asking, hey, how are you doing? Do you need help with something? Or like, is there any issue that be proactively try to solve issues and to prevent them? And I think it's also really, that is important because it motivates the site, it shows them that you care, and it reminds them that we all are working towards the same goal, and when we want to come to the same point at the end.
Yeah, we have the same goal. Absolutely true. But I love to see that we also care about the challenges that the sites are going through, and there's an underlying reason of why maybe we're not getting those documents, or we're not getting those updates, or those acknowledgement of receipts. There's always an issue that we need to identify, and it might be that they don't have enough resources or enough time, or maybe they're overworked, there are too many patients or too many patient visits, maybe the protocol is just too swamped and we do too many things, or we have our sites doing too many things. But the important part from a site relationships coordinator, but also from a CRA, if you don't have the luxury, let's say, of having a site relationship coordinator or a CTA or somebody to support you, is to identify that.
Yeah, and I would also add one important thing that I forgot. Ask your site how they prefer and when they prefer to be contacted, because it comes to mind one particular site that we are working with. They have one person that they want us to contact this one person about like any issue, at least in feasibility phase, about any issue or anything that we need from site. And then this one person at the site distributes and coordinates the message to whomever it needs to go to. So I remember when I just started, when I started at the company where I'm working at, I didn't really know about this unwritten rule of the site. So I started contacting with PIs, and I just remember receiving from this person at the site, like, she was obviously polite and everything, and she knew that I'm new, and she told me, hey, like, can you please not contact them? We prefer that you speak through me. But I remember feeling so embarrassed. Obviously, like afterwards I felt better because I know I was just starting in this company and I couldn't know because I didn't work previously with this site. But yeah, ask them how they prefer to be contacted and when and so on.
That's absolutely something relevant to CRAs too, because the way your preferred means of communication needs to be also identified when you do that site initiation visit. Because I, for example, as a CRA myself included, if you're constantly sending me emails and I have 100 emails, I might not be able to spot something urgent that has just come 5 minutes ago because I have a backlog of 100 emails. But if I know that our communication channel is whenever something's urgent, you call me, then I know that if I have a phone call ringing, then I need to pick that because it's something urgent. And if it's an email, it can wait 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours until I catch up with my email inbox. We have a few questions here in the chat, and I want to make sure that I address them before we move to the last section of our discussion. And Benedictor here is asking, is it possible to get the list of 53 documents? I think they're 54, but absolutely. That one is a very straightforward. So if you just literally Google ICH GCP E6R3, I have no idea why I said R4 before, because we've been talking about R3 so long that I'm already thinking about R4. If you just Google ICH GCP E6 R3, it will take you to the official document, and it's a PDF, and you can download it from the EMA, for example, from the regulatory authority. And just at the end of that document, you will have, I think it's 18, 20 pages of all of these 54 documents. We have another question here from Carla, who says, is it standard time from visit to report? Is the standard time from visit to report that varies from 5 to 7 days reasonable? That's a very interesting question. And I'd love to know from Maria del Mar, as a CRA. I know perhaps every company has slightly different timelines on how to submit, when to submit your reports, but what's your experience?
I think it depends a lot of the amount of site visits that you have. You know, if you have a lot of visits on the same week, then you don't have the time to do the visit and the report and prepare for another visit. If you have a more spaced visits, then you do have the time. Then, for instance, I would always prepare my report before the visit, and I will do the visit with my report. When I was finishing the visit on the airport, I could almost complete the report, so that the 5, 6, 7 days, it was manageable. But if you have a lot of it always depends on the amount of work that you have. You know, if I had a lot of work and I could not prepare it, then it could easily just be a lot of work that could just go one behind on the other, and it will not be manageable. But you know, it usually is. You need to have a good system and be organized and always prepare before the report. So because at the visit, you know what you have to answer. Because when I started, it happened to me that I would think, oh, I'll do the report when I finish the visit, and then there was this question that I did not check. So if you do it beforehand, it's easier to 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 complete the report in this time.
Very true. And I think from my own experience as well, it is a standard timeline that you are required to submit that report within 5 days. Actually, I'm used to within 5 days, not even 7, because if you noticed or identified something at your site that might be of significance and your sponsor needs to know, maybe it's not related to a serious adverse event, which you need to obviously report as soon as you identify them, but other items can be of very big relevance, and you maybe don't understand the importance of what you're reporting, but maybe a sponsor is. So there is a reason why we need to report what we're identifying at our site monitoring visits as soon as we can. And the tip about preparing or pre-filling the monitoring visit report, it's such a good one for every CRA, because then so much information can be just disregarded, and you can go to, after the monitoring visits, put in what's relevant, put in what's important, what you've identified, and it's ready to be sent to for review. Dana, I see a couple of questions, a couple of comments here from you. I know you're requesting a list of documents to check at SIV site initiation with the closeout visits. I hope you understand that unfortunately we can't list that here just in terms of time, or we will stay here for at least another 4 hours. But we do have those checklists within CRAConnect community, and those are accessible to all our CRAs, members of the CRAConnect community. And I saw the other question regarding differences between milestones and EDLs. I'm more than happy to take that perhaps offline or in the next session. I would love to keep track of all of the questions that we're getting in the comment section, and I will. So keep up to date with the post that we will do after this live event, because I'll make sure that we get these questions and we respond them maybe perhaps through posts, so that you can get our opinion on that. But I know we've been here for 46 minutes, so I want to get to the last part that I think is super valuable to all our CRAs listening and here present in this live. But when we get towards the end of a clinical study, so we've identified and we've talked a little bit about the challenges at study startup, site initiation, monitoring visits reports. We have now some tools, some supporting tools, some skills that can help us navigate those better. When we get to closeout, that we might maybe sometimes even be stressed out, because this might be the last chance you have to go on site, although never is like properly last time, but officially it is the last time that you get to be on site and get those documents. Kitty, I would love to know from your perspective of more regulatory, how do you prepare for that closeout visit? as of the documentation package?
Hopefully, unfortunately, we are not alone in this process. In the best scenario, you have almost or an in-house CRA or a CTA or a regulatory associate who can help you. And as a closeout, we have 2 or 3 or 4 years behind of us working on the study. So we are very, very close to each other, working from day to day together. So as I experienced, it's very, very important to track the main documents to yourself. And when you are preparing for a closeout visit, you have to make, we can say, a team call where you can suggest for each other and track everything that what you are missing, what you have to focus on. And I saw in the comments there is a question about checklists, and as I know, the CTMs or the sponsor always provide some kind of COV checklists, which is very, very useful because they are in bullet points. There are some kind of list. You can see what kind of main documents you have to focus on. But as in a GCP and the startup and everywhere, the main documents are the CVs, GCP certifications, celebrations. All of these documents you have to be up to date, and it's not have it needs to be not expired. So after that, all of these are in place. It's a very, very good start. And after that, you can focus on, you can say the less important. Every documents are important, but there is less important documents. And you can do a list and or a tracker, and you can send to the CRA who will go to the monitoring visit, the closeout visit, and you can help them to collect all the documents. The issue is when we can't collect something on the closeout visit. It's a kind of a problem, but as Stasia said, you have to maintain a very, very good relationship with the site. And if you have a good coordinator, you can contact her after the visit that, oh my God, we missed something. You can help me. Okay, we can do that after the visit. So that's why the relationship is very, very important, almost crucial to maintain all of these documentations. And once you have these kind of trackers to yourself, you can, just tick it from time to time and check that everything in place. By the way, Viva Vault or the ETMF system always have some kind of Excel or some kind of trackers you can pull and download, so you can maintain that all the documents are placed in TMF, and there is some most important placeholders which will highlight you that it's missing. It's a very, very red. So you can see that it's a very important document.
Absolutely.
So hopefully, and I think it's the core, that you are not alone. You have to work in a team and you can collect all the documentation together. So don't face it alone because it's too big problem. We have to do it together.
And very true. And it also depends on the state of the study, right? Some studies are very smooth and go from the very beginning, just very clean and neat. And you have the ISF and the ETMF ready to go and ready to ship. But some sites and some studies can be more complex. Maybe just to wrap up the topic of the closeout visits, the managing of the documentation, you did mention a very, very good point, which is documentation needs to be managed somehow through some checklist or tracker, whichever you have. You might have it from the ETMF system that you use, maybe you don't. You might have it from the study manager, maybe you don't. You might do it yourself. You might be able to create your own trackers. Hopefully every CRA here has a oversight tracker of your sites, of your studies, of your tasks, of your documentation. And there you can also track continuously what's in the ETMF, what's in the ISF, what's missing. But I know from my own experience, having been a CRA almost for 6 years, I know that sometimes you might not have those resources. So when you feel that you don't have those resources and you might feel that you don't have enough support or enough tools for you as a CRA. Always remember that there is a hub for CRAs that has all of these resources, and we're all here in the panel part of that community of CRAConnect. And if you need some of that support, we're always there with these resources available for you, but also through a mentorship program. And by the way, 3 of our panelists here are mentors in the mentorship program. And there are, if you are more of a junior CRA, you will get matched with one of our mentors, more experienced CRAs. And on a continuous basis, you get that support specific to you, and you can feel that you are not alone, to Kitty's point, but also to, I think I raised the point at one point that I was in a company with 60,000 employees and 45 CRAs in my team, and I felt alone. Not because you're alone, but because you're constantly traveling and you're faced with new experiences every single day. So I want to thank all the panelists that have joined me today in this discussion, to Maria del Mar, to Stasia, to Kitty, to Charlotte. I loved our conversation. I know that we will do more of these conversations, so keep an eye on our next event. It's going to be in 2 weeks. And if you are interested to know what are we part of, we're part of this community, check it out. See if you want a space for you to develop, to grow, to get more resources, to get through the mentorship program, to learn about the CRA role perhaps, or to research what is our group of plus 800 CRAs all around the world. And having said that, thank you for everyone who has been watching, who's been listening, and I hope that you found this insightful. Send us a message, follow us on LinkedIn, just connect with us. We'll be more than happy to answer any of the many questions I know we've had that we just couldn't reach in such a short time, even though I was aiming for 35 minutes. But thank you for having been with us in this conversation, and I loved to host everyone here on the panel too. Thank you, and see you in 2 weeks. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.
Thanks. Bye.